Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda from She Should Run, and I'd like to thank you so much for joining our event today, Your Vote and Then Some, sponsored by Makers. This inspiring discussion is designed to get you energized and motivated for the upcoming election and beyond. So before we dive in, we have a couple of housekeeping items to take care of. ASL interpreters and closed captions are available throughout the webinar for your convenience. And then after the webinar, we'd appreciate if you could take a few minutes to take our post-webinar survey that's in the description below. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our moderator for this event, Dr. C. Nicole Mason. Recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders, Dr. C. Nicole Mason is president and CEO of Future Forward Women, a legislative exchange and policy network committed to advancing progressive public policies at the state and federal levels. Nicole was named one of Glamour's magazine's 100 influential women leaders and Washingtonian's magazine's 500 most influential people in Washington, D.C. She also won the highest competitive New Executive Award from the Open Society Foundations and was honored as a Thrive Leader by the Cresage Foundation. She is an inaugural Ascend Fellow at the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C. The dynamic TED Talk Nicole delivered on the gift of being difficult and the power of disruption continues to spark online and offline conversations about celebrating and amplifying unshakable, plucky voices. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
I'm really excited to be here and thank you, Amanda, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to She Should Run for hosting this important discussion. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Your Vote and Then Some, sponsored by Makers. She Should Run is dedicated to significantly increasing the number of women considering running for public office, a mission that is crucial in reaching the 24 million women who aren't yet thinking about running, but should be. Today, we're joined by two inspiring leaders in the democracy space who will discuss not only how to get out the vote, but also how to stay engaged and affect change in our communities beyond the 2024 election. First, I want to introduce Celina Stewart. Celina is the Chief Executive Officer of the League of Women Voters of the United States. In this role, she is charged with executing the mission to empower voters and defend democracy and managing the 104-year-old voting rights organization's operations and resources. Celina has appeared on television news program and been interviewed for media articles, including CBS, CNN, the Associated Press, Vogue, CBS, News Radio, Washington Post, Bloomberg, Time Magazine, and many others. Celina earned her JD from Western Michigan University Law School and her BA in sociology from Spelman College. Go Spelman. So our next speaker is Virginia Kase Solomon. Virginia is the president and CEO of Common Cause and is a nationally recognized leader in social justice and civil rights with 30 years of experience in advocacy and policy. She has previously served as the CEO of the League of Women Voters, where she led significant organizational growth and successful No Excuses campaign for voting rights. She was also the Chief Operations Officer at Kase, managing strategic growth in the immigrant rights movement. Her activism began in her early 20s, co-founding a youth-led nonprofit in Hartford, Connecticut. She has testified before Congress on voting in elections and has been featured in major news outlets. In 2020, she was named one of People in Espanol Most Powerful Women of the Year and one of Washingtonian Magazine's Most Influential People in Washington in 2022 and 2023. Wow. I'm so excited for this conversation and to be with you both today. Right, we're all here. And I'm just gonna jump in and start with a question that's for both of you. So as we approach the election, there's a lot of excitement and everyone's feeling energized. And now more than ever, we need women stepping into political leadership roles. How do you see the upcoming election motivating women to not only get involved, but stay involved in their communities? Who wants to start? Virginia?
Sure. So good to see you and great to see my friend Celina. So I think one of the things that's really amazing right now and what's different, I don't know, I think the energy feels different this year because I think that more women see themselves reflected in the diversity of the candidate pool of the women who are running. You see women of all ages, racial ethnicities, backgrounds. And so it's not just about the presidency, although there is a ton of energy behind that. It's that women are seeing more young women running. So there are young women who are more enthusiastic. We're seeing older women who feel like they're not disposable, right? That their voice and the wisdom and the experience that they've had over their lifetimes actually matter and are more meaningful now. And so that intergenerational kind of broad swath of women who are saying, I have a voice and I'm going to use it. And then being able to see themselves reflected. And I think the way that women are showing up is different. It's more authentic to who we are. It's okay to bring your baby with you if you need to breastfeed on the road and you have an event. We're able to center women's issues in a different way than we ever have been before. So whether it's about our reproductive health or our economic issues that we're facing, or how we see the world in the future for our children and how they're being educated, I think these are all really important things that are bringing a lot of energy and agency to women in a way that maybe they didn't see it in the past because women always had to show up the way that men have traditionally in order to be respected as candidates. And now we know as women that we can show up exactly how we are, and that's okay because we are reflective of the majority of the population in this country. So for me, that's what I'm seeing and hearing.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for saying that because I remember in it was 2016, all the women who were running for the nomination, many of them were mothers, but you never heard about it on the stage. And then fast forward now, there's the diversity of women running and on the stage is really phenomenal. And like you said, women are bringing their full selves, to the conversation and to politics, and that's amazing. And it feels like a watershed moment. What are you thinking, Celina, in terms of women, what this moment means for women?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because normally Virginia and I have had these conversations in our office, and so now we're having it in front of everybody, which is fun. But yeah, so a few things. So I feel like women are showing up differently, but I feel like it's a ramp up. I feel like this has been ramping up for some time now. I don't think I realized even until there was a switch on the ticket how dead the cycle was. Because following that change, there has just been so much momentum across the country in terms of excitement and people wanting to get engaged, and even people doing grassroots organizing, digital organizing, relational organizing, like through Zoom. Like we heard about the 44,000 Black women who started this. And then after all the domino effects of people just saying, let's get together. How are we going to show up? How are we going to make sure that this thing happens? Now, the league, of course, is nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose any particular candidate, but I think that we would be remiss not to just acknowledge the very historical moment that is existing in this country. But even beyond that, across the world, we've seen the first woman president of Mexico elected, Claudia Steinbaum, a Jewish woman who will now be leading the Mexican government. And then we saw in New Zealand, like there is some momentum building up, I think, around the world and a readiness to have a woman lead a country or these countries. And so I think that it's really empowering because I think the representation piece is so critical here because when you see a candidate that looks like you, it takes that ceiling just a little bit closer to you, right? It's closer to achieve. And so I think that for so many people that this election in particular that's happening in the US means something to people. And like Virginia said, people see themselves more in this election, especially if you are a multiracial woman, if you are, 50s, or because sometimes women think that you have to be older or younger to do certain things. And so I just think it's a really powerful moment. And it's a privilege to be in this moment in history and to watch it as it's happening and unfolding.
I think that's right. I think it just feels like you said, very electric. Like we all want to be involved. We all want to be showing up. We all want to be doing something, volunteering, signing other folks up to vote, talking to our family members. I think, it just feels right. And, so not only urgent, but also feels like this is a moment for us to really do something because it does feel very historic. So, Virginia, so Common Cause is a fantastic nonpartisan organization supporting national, state, and local efforts to strengthen democracy. What challenges are you encountering in your day-to-day work that are the biggest barriers from preventing women from engaging civically or running for office?
So that's a really good question. I think one of the things that we often see, going back to some of the things that I said were motivators before, for many women, being able to just get across that financial threshold is one thing, whether it's being able to take a day off from work to be able to vote. If you are a low wage earner or even a middle wage earner, for example, in this country right now, for a lot of women, the ability to take time off from work. I mean, this was the same thing. My mom was a factory worker and a domestic worker. That meant losing money. That meant not being able to go in to work on time or actually having to take time off unpaid to be able to engage in the act of voting. So we need to figure out, one, how we are able to help women in particular, and all people, but I would say specifically for women to be able to make sure that they have the ability to do that unimpeded without fear of losing wage. I think the other thing that we need to think about, and this goes back to money, and there's a huge issue with money in politics as a whole, but the reality is that despite what we've seen with, for example, the current presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, this is almost an anomaly. She is the exception currently, not the rule when it comes to how women candidates are able to raise money. And so we have to name that there is a lot of electricity, there is a lot of energy around her as a particular candidate. Every other woman candidate that you see out there is saying, hey, I need $15. Can you donate $5 to my campaign? The small dollar donor financing, because the reality is that many women are not getting the same kind of campaign contributions that you see coming into men. And so I would say money is always an issue, whether it's as a candidate who needs to raise money to be able to have a campaign that is effective, or whether it's somebody who is just going to engage in the voting process themselves, who may be losing money by being able to go and vote. And so for me, that is one of the biggest barriers that women face. And then the last thing I would say is, for women in particular in this moment, we want people to be inspired and to be energized and to be excited about voting. But we've also seen that women, particularly people who work in the election space, so election administrators, election volunteers, women are at a higher risk of facing political harassment, violence, and threats because of doing that job. And so there is also this need to keep women safe when they are engaging in their civic work and engaging in those civic duties, which are so very critical and important. If you look at the number of volunteers, people who are election workers on election day, the majority of those folks are women. They're also more likely to be harassed and to have to deal with those issues. So I would say money and safety are two critical issues that we need to continue to focus on and address to make sure that women can really step into their leadership, not only as voters and the heads of their households and members of their families, but as candidates and people who want to be engaged civically. Those are the big things for me.
Thank you so much. And I think even in thinking about how we do this work and how we bring more women in, really being mindful of all of these three things so that we can increase women's participation. So Celina, voting is a key part of this conversation. From your perspective with the League of Women Voters, what are some of the most effective ways to encourage women to vote, particularly those who might feel disenfranchised or apathetic about the political process and feel like their vote might not count?
So I feel like women have always been the backbone of elections for years. Certainly since women entered the franchise, have always been the drivers of elections in terms of showing up to vote, bringing their family with them, checking to make sure people are in their family, in their community, are registered to vote, and bringing folks to the polls. And so I think that one of the, like Virginia mentioned, safety. And I think that one of the things that we have seen women do in particular is overcome these fears, right? We saw in 2022, when reproductive justice was on the ballot in 5 states, that people showed up and they invalidated, negated those measures that were happening. And I think that we have to think about not only the multiple universes people hold when they're thinking about voting, like one, as a Black woman, I know that there's always going to be some new tool. It'll be a new tool in the same costume, but it'll be a new tool because it's always targeting Black folks in particular, brown folks, women, et cetera, anyone who I think could really change and influence the direction of this country. And so being mindful of that and how we overcome barriers and what are the tools being used to disenfranchise, like we've seen things like voter purges around the country. This election cycle, we've seen a rise in AI used to create mis and disinformation campaigns. We had one in New Hampshire. In particular, there was a robocall on primary day, January 23rd, that went out saying, don't worry about voting, just catch up in general election. Well, anyone who does election or who votes, see, look at the face, look at your face, Nicole, that's right. Anyone who knows that the primaries dictate who is in the general, right? But that went to tens of thousands of people in New Hampshire. And I think had the news not picked it up, had the league and other organizations like the league not been on the ground telling voters, please go vote, this is mis and disinformation, the election is still running, we encourage, you need to go out and vote. But even things like that, like we have to be aware of the tools that are being used against us, who are the targets of those tools, and overcoming those barriers. Because we have seen, as I would just say, as a Black community, somewhat like a history of violence, a history of things being targeted towards us to disenfranchise and encourage us to disengage. And there's always been something that motivates us to overcome that and vote anyway because of how powerful it is to vote in this country and how important it is to have our voices heard, to change the direction of this country. And right now, we are in a hyper partisan, hyper political climate where literally lives are on the line. There are women around this country who have different access to care for their bodies. Some of us in certain parts of the country don't have the ability to make decisions over our body. And so those type of decisions, those type of legislation, those type of initiatives, the only way to overturn that in many situations is to litigate or to go out and show up at the ballot box. And so I would say that it's just so critical for us to be reminded that this is just another election cycle and there will always be tools, but how do we tap into the things that motivate us to change this world and change this country to reflect what we want it to be?
Right. And, what I find amazing in all of this, and, Virginia, feel free to jump in here, but what I feel, that's amazing about all of this is that despite all these barriers, people persist. They wait in the long lines. They do the work. We, as, organizers and leaders, try to counter that disinformation, but it's very clear that we need some systemic change around, some of this so that, people can just go and vote and exercise their constitutional right. Virginia, did you want to add anything? And I want to invite either one of you to add on to any of the questions or answers that the other is giving.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think one of the things that historically women have always showed up because we have to, because we know literally that our lives are on the line. And there are so many women who, especially post kind of the women's rights movement in the 60s and early 70s, where we saw women going into the workforce, being able to have credit on their own. I mean, for how long could a woman not even buy a house on her own, right? So all of the things that women have faced, we know that those things are the result of electing candidates who are going to support us. And so we've had to in order to be able to advance our lives. But the reality is, I think that many of us have gotten really comfortable. I know for me, I came from the Gen X generation, and we were used to being able to know that there was safety in, if I needed to have an abortion, I could do that. That was something that we had inherited. And so I think now, even more than ever, when we think about what we're fighting for and what we're fighting to regain, which is the ability to take care of ourselves, our health, our bodily autonomy, we've seen what's been taken away, something that we just thought was precedent, that it was case law, that it was settled case law. That's no longer the case with so many aspects of our lives. And so I think for many women, that is a huge motivating factor. But it's also really sad at the same time, right? To think about, because we have to continue to hold on and fight and claw our way back to a baseline that no longer exists. And so I think that is a huge motivating factor for a lot of women, but it is also one that gives me hope, because when you look at the number of women who are turning out, it reminds me that we can do anything that we set our minds to. We just really have to show up in numbers.
And what I love
And
about
I'll
this,
just,
go ahead.
oh no,
Selena.
go ahead. Go.
No, I was just gonna say, I love the way young women are showing up. It's different than how I showed up, so many years ago. I won't say how many, but it just feels new and fresh, and it's on their own terms. So that's also very exciting. Celina, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm also motivated by our male allies. My dad is 78 years old, and he is like, I'm waiting for the election. I'm gonna make sure I vote in this election. And so I just think about, and I don't think that he's an anomaly. I think that there are many people who know that things have gone too far and that we're going backwards as a country and not forwards in a lot of regards. And so I appreciate the women, how women are showing up. I appreciate the energy, but I also appreciate the allies that we have here that are like, no, enough is enough. We've got to change not only the country that we're living in, the laws that are regulating so many parts of our lives, but also just the direction of this country generally.
Right, because it's gonna take all of us, like literally everyone. I was in my MSNBC watching evangelicals for for a candidate for Harris, and it really, I was energized. It's like, wow, we really do need a really big coalition for this bigger project that is democracy. So speaking of AI, democracy, there's a and getting people the right information to make informed decision. There is a lot of disinformation and misinformation. Celina, I'm wondering if you can talk, or both of you talk about, the impact it's having on voters and how voters might cut through the noise so they can make informed decisions.
Yeah, so we have a whole toolkit on this about how to not share mis and disinformation. But I think so we're in a technology age where there's so much information at our fingertips. Literally, you can go online and Google something. You can even search on like TikTok, which is insane. But you can search all of these things and have so much information at your fingertips. And I think that sometimes there is a desire sometimes just to share some of the crazy things you see on social media, or whether it's coming down from news cycles or whatever. And I think this requires just a little bit of restraint, because when we're seeing like really crazy narratives out there, we want to make sure that we are not actually sharing that and actually sharing something that is accurate, so that the accurate information creates an echo chamber out in the public. But it's hard because some of it is just salacious. It just seems crazy, and you're just like, what the hell? But I think that one is, it just takes a little bit of restraint, but it's so critical, because we saw what happened in 2016. We saw what happened in 2020 when there was information and infiltration from other countries into our election system. And there hasn't really been clear guardrails put on that, in my opinion, yet. But part of that's because we're dealing with the internet, and the internet is less regulated than other parts of our world and election laws or election related content. And so I think it's so important as individuals to be careful about what we share, check and see if it's a valid source, and share accurate information, but also just interrogate the information that's being filtered to you on social media. Because if we don't interrogate, I think we're likely to succumb to just bad information and being part of the problem, which is sharing it out to people that we care about.
That's right. And many of us live in echo chambers on either side of the aisle. Virginia, did you want to add anything about this discussion around disinformation, misinformation, and how to counter that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is question everything you hear. If it's not coming from a really, truly valid, accurate, I mean, because we used to be able to say, go to the candidates themselves. The reality is that there are many candidates who are, perpetuating myths and bad information. And so I would say going to an organization like the League has a great Vote 411 website, which is amazing because it gives all of the information. Organizations like Common Cause, where we do candidate questionnaires, we really dig into the platform. We actually do scorecards on certain candidates. And so going to an organization that is a trusted source, that you can get factual information that is rooted in truth. And then I think the other thing is, if you see something, say something, so to speak, and that is, when it comes to reporting mis and disinformation online that Celina alluded to, the fact that there is just so much information out there on social media. There's recently there was a report that came out that said that 70% of young people between the ages of 18 and 29 get their political information from TikTok. Think about that. The amount of information that people are getting. So I think one of the things that's important is not only just looking at what becomes a viral moment, but is that viral moment actually rooted in truth, right? So being able to go back and do the information, if something seems wrong, report that information online to make sure that it's not continuing to be perpetuated, but really finding those honest brokers of information that are usually C3 and C4 organizations that can provide people with the information they need to be able to make an accurate and informed decision. And the reality is, also, sometimes it's just going back to those good old honest news sites. When you look at like ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, taking away all of the other punditry, because we know that a lot of the people who are giving out information these days they're not hard-hitting journalists. Journalism is really struggling in this day and age. There's a lot of punditry out there. So going to actual journalists to be able to get information that's rooted in fact, I think is also critical and important.
I think that's right. And, it feels to me that we have our work cut out for us, between the misinformation, the keeping people energized, women energized, making sure that women have the resources they need to be able to run for office and making sure that they are safe when they do so. It just feels like a really huge effort. But I know that both of you are, and I am really up to that challenge. And as you both know, She Should Run is a nonpartisan organization that encourages women to consider running for public office. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask both of you, would you ever consider running for office? Well, everybody, answer at
Virginia.
once.
Celina, you should take that one first because you already know my answer.
I have had the privilege and education to be very close to politics, working in politics at the state level and federal. So that's a hard no for me. But I am definitely happy to help inform, influence, and help guide the discussion. But politics is a wild ride. But I am grateful for the league because the league has equipped so many women to go on to larger pursuits politically because of the work that we do. Advocacy, education, being in community, learning how to speak in front of folks and influence folks. And so I am very comfortable in my role on the sidelines as a spectator.
And I would just say for me, Nicole, I have been approached about running in the past. And so I will never say never. What I will say is, for me personally, I don't see myself in any time in the near future doing that because I really love organizing. I love being able to work with people on a day-to-day basis around pushing and keeping legislators, giving legislators the support they need to have the courage to do what is right, to help be a moral compass for those legislators once they get in office. I personally don't have the patience to legislate as an activist because I want things done and I like to be able to push. So I would say for me, it's a no, not right now, but who knows what the future could hold. I always say, it takes a special person to be able to legislate. And I don't think that I'm that special person at this point in my life, because I really like to be able to engage in my politics in a way that is authentic to me. And for that means being really rooted in organizing and advocacy.
And I think we all have a role to play. You know, we're advocates, we are the organizers, we are the thinkers and the, getting the ideas out into the public sphere. And I admire the women who do choose to run, because it is a really it's a slog, given even some of the things that we've talked about today. But, thankfully they have organizations like She Should Run and the League and Common Cause to support them and lift them up as they do enter public life. I want to transition and do a call for action before we get to questions. So before we get to questions from those who are listening, we would greatly appreciate if you could take time to complete our survey after today's webinar, which is linked in the description below and through a link you'll see on your screen. Your input helps She Should Run continue to improve our programs and provide insightful and helpful resources for women like you. So with that, we have one final question for both of you. What is one thing that you would encourage a woman in our audience to do today to get more civically involved around voting or another issue that they care about in their community?
I mean, I'm happy to start and just say finding your political home. And that doesn't mean it has to be within a political party. It can be in a variety of different ways, whether that is becoming an election worker, and we need election workers so desperately right now. Whether it's becoming an election worker, whether it is being able to join an organization like Common Cause or the League of Women Voters, where you can engage on issues, whether it is being able to demonstrate your activism and lean in through financial donations. I'm a big supporter of financial activism, right? Sometimes you don't have the time to show up and maybe engage in a certain kind of meeting, but you might have the resources that can be the fuel and the power for all that we need to be able to drive an issue forward. So I would say find those things that you care most about, and then see what organizations are doing that work, whether it's, again, through becoming an election volunteer, whether it is through an organization where you can engage in a more meaningful way, or whether it's making those financial contributions and donations. Whatever works for you. And I would also say that nothing's too small. There's something really interesting that I found, especially when I started my career, and that was just showing up to community meetings. When there are open, like city council meetings, county meetings, being able to show up at local neighborhood meetings, whatever those might be. Sometimes it's just that small thing of showing up, that small act of showing up and showing elected leaders that you're actually paying attention and watching, that matters and can make all the difference in the world with how they show up with their vote or what they're doing. And so I think there are just a variety of different ways, but it's really looking closest to home first and then going further out from there.
Right. I always say that there is something that you can do like right outside your door. Like you can build community by just stepping right outside of your door. What about you, Celina?
I would just say, please, please, please don't abdicate or forget your power, because voting is power, and it allows us to show up and change things in ways that we can't do in other spaces. And I feel like if we, as women particularly, know our power, stand in it, and don't forget it, because we are sharers. We are community sharers. So if we get information, we're going to share it with community. So I don't worry about it spreading. But I think the first thing is knowing it, because I think sometimes we forget. Sometimes in some areas we are treated like second-class citizens, both in this country, and you can even feel like that in your house. You work all day and you come home, you got to do all these things. But if we can remember what our power is, and particularly the power of the vote, I think that we will be miles and centuries ahead of our predecessors. And so just remembering that power and exercising it, I think, is critical.
I think that's like the perfect note to end on. to remind us to remember our power, both in our homes and in our communities, and in all ways. I think, that's really fantastic. So, as we wrap up, I just want to express my gratitude to our panelists, Celina and Virginia, and it's so good to be in conversation with you all today. And again, for all those who showed up to hear us and listen to us, and hopefully we gave you food for thought and ways to engage wholeheartedly and full-throatedly in our upcoming political and election process. It's an historic moment.
Thank you, Nicole.
So much. Really appreciate this conversation, and for everybody at She Should Run for creating this space. I think it's more important now than ever. So really grateful to be here, and also with my old colleague, Celina.
Hey, Virginia. Thanks, Nicole.